ahead and I'll call the December 13th regular Seward City Council meeting to order. Chief, could you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Tonight's roll call: Wells,
Here.
Osenga, on his way. I haven't heard.
No,
Well, I thought he
told
said
you.
he wouldn't be here for this.
Oh,
That was
excuse.
excused.
So sorry, my
Was it?
apologies. Demas,
Here.
McClure,
Here.
Casagrande,
Here.
Calhoun,
Here.
and Mayor Terry.
Yes,
You have a quorum.
thank you. Next on the agenda is citizen comments on any subject except those items scheduled for public hearing. We have 2 public hearing items tonight. Those who have signed in will be given the first opportunity to speak. Time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, 36 minutes total time for this agenda item. And folks can come to the podium and just state whether they're a resident of Seward.
The first person signed in is Brad Snowden.
Well, good evening, council. Seward. I'm here because I'm thinking of Seward's future. You know, I'm 70 years old. We know, who knows how long somebody has. So the message is not about me. It's about the future of Seward. That being said, you know, I can't help but think, I need to make one other comment, you know, about knowing somebody, how we know somebody. You ever wonder how to get opinion of somebody? You know, usually this is how it happens. We get a little bit of information. We see how they walk, or we've heard something about them, or we've actually had some experience with them. And we now know that person. I think of people that know you. They've got an opinion of you, and you've heard them talk about you. And sometimes it comes back to you not too happy about it, because you wonder where they get that. They don't know you at all. I'm gonna tell you, you really don't know me at all. You know a little bit about me. That being said, there's more there than meets the eye, the same as there is with each one of you. And I know it. But I'm here to talk about Seward's future. You know, I used to own a hotel here for 20 years, and I was very concerned about the future of Seward, as well as the downtown area. We've got a beautiful Sea Life Center down there that has a pretty tough time, like the rest of downtown, in the wintertime. And I wonder, how can we fix that? I even spent some time trying to get the council to form a winter tourism task force, and they did. And Louis Bernardino was the mayor at the time, and he sat on that, and we met one time. And that one time, at the end of that, I knew there's no point anymore until we got one thing solved, and that transportation link is the key. Because they're not going to drive down here in the wintertime for darn near anything you do down here. It's a long, that's a scary ass road, excuse me. I broke my neck driving it one time, and I'm a professional driver. Besides having 50 years of driving that highway after living here for 55 years. But talking about the future, that airport, that runway, we could build one. The demand is there justifiably with the cruise ship industry we have today. They'd be flying out of here. They wouldn't be putting them in coaches to go to Anchorage. But once you've got that runway, now we can look at what can we do in the wintertime, because now we can get them here. Then comes the ideas, 2 of them. That Sea Life Center struggles through the winter as well. Get a convention center down there. 150 people. I don't know the exact size, but I'd ask the city manager to set out searching for it. She has people working for her. That's her job. She knows what she's doing. She'll get the right person to do the job. Got such talent in this town.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Okay.
Have a good day. Is there anyone else signed in to speak?
No, ma'am.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak that hasn't signed in? Yes, sir.
Mayor, council, manager, friends, citizens. I wasn't sure I was going to talk tonight, but I can't help but one up Brad, I'm a little bit older. And my interest is in the future of Seward as well. One of the things that in the present is very difficult is that the new redistricting plan separates the Moose Pass community from the city of Seward. I sit on the Port and Commerce Commission because I see an East Peninsula economic zone, and I like to participate in that. There are communities, 3 now, in the state of Alaska, that are objecting to the redistricting plan. And even without my particular interest of Moose Pass, the city of Seward's interests are not well served, in my opinion, by the grouping that is currently in place, or currently shows. So if there's any consideration for legal action, or strong objection, or joining others, I think the city should take that opportunity. I remember the Donut District. We did have something good come out of that. Margaret Branson was there during that era, and her legacy lives with us still. But her traipsing around the Donut District was not an easy thing to do. So I ask you to consider that strongly for the interests of the East Peninsula Economic District.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Linda Buquette, outside city limits. In this packet or on this agenda, you've got 2 expansions of subdivisions. We've got people talking about convention centers. And we have a wastewater treatment facility that is under capacity at least half of the year. And I'm not speaking to the 6-year capital improvement stuff, but I am speaking to the resolution for 2022's list. Because I think this is the last opportunity to make any changes to that. And I just really feel like we're missing out on a possibility of getting funding for a new wastewater facility that, so there's a couple of things, like you put that list together, but I don't think that the replacing or expanding wastewater facility was one of the questions that got asked. And we know some stuff we didn't know when that list was getting built. And one of the things we know is the new inundation maps. So now what you can see on those new inundation maps is that the facility that you currently have is in the inundation zone. That big dark block in the red is the lagoon on that map, on those inundation maps. And the little light yellow square is actually the upper parking lot of the state park. So like right now, that's where people go if there's a tsunami warning. It's like, they're not in a very good spot because they're going to be surrounded by water. But it just seems like, I know, like I've read through the federal stuff and I don't see specifically where they're talking about wastewater facilities, but they are talking about infrastructure and they're talking about climate change impacts. And so I really, I can't encourage you strongly enough to put something about wastewater facilities in the list, because what if we fast forward to when we get through the things that the consultants suggested and then there's still problems? There's not going to be big piles of money maybe 10 years from now or 5 years from now, but there's big piles of money that we could incorporate and try and get some for this town now. So I just respectfully ask for you to really, really think about those inundation maps and the consultant's report that you got. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing none, next is approval of the agenda and consent agenda, and I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I move for the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda.
I will second. I'd like to add one thing. We have the auspicious Tim Dillon, Dillon, with the Economic Development District in our midst. And I wanted to add in other reports and announcements in number 3 to give him the opportunity to speak. Is there any objections to that? Thank you. Vice Mayor?
I'd like to add Resolution 2021-143 to the consent agenda.
Is there any objections? Thank you. Any other changes? Great, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready for a vote.
Voting on tonight's agenda and consent agenda. Calhoun?
Yes.
Casagrande?
Yes.
Demas?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Leclerc?
Yes.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
Your agenda and consent agenda are approved. And approved on tonight's consent agenda, Resolution 2021-138, authorizing the city manager to accept and appropriate funds from the EASY ARPA grant in the amount of $6,000 for the Seward Technology and Community Enrichment Project on behalf of the Seward Community Library and Museum. Resolution 2021-139, authorizing the city manager to accept and appropriate funds from the fiscal year 2022 ARPA grant in the amount of $37,777 for the Seward Technology and Community Enrichment Project on behalf of the Seward Community Library and Museum. Resolution 2021-140, accepting American Rescue Plan Act federal grant funds in the amount of $577,195 for the purpose of investment in water and sewer infrastructure. Resolution 2021-141, confirming application for the ARPA Local Government Lost Revenue Relief Program from the Alaska Department of Commerce, Community and Economic Development to offset significant revenue loss due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. Resolution 2021-142, authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Carmen Jackson CPA LLC for finance and accounting services in an amount not to exceed $125,000 and appropriating funds. Resolution 2021-143, authorizing the city manager to execute task order number 2374.00 with R&M Consultants for the development of the proposed Hemlock subdivision concepts in the amount not to exceed $19,471 and appropriating funds. And you have approved the November 8th, 2021 regular meeting minutes, November 22nd, 2021 regular meeting minutes, and the December 6th special meeting minutes, and you have canceled the December 27th, 2021 city council meeting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next on the agenda is City Manager's Report, and that starts on page 4 of your packet, and I will turn it over to the City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One item that is on my report is the municipal jail issue, and in my report I reported that Chief Nickel would expand on this topic, myself or Chief Nickel, and Chief Nickel is going to expand on it. I have a little bit to add after him, but if you will provide the information from the meeting.
Mayor and Council, on December 7th, I hosted a meeting at the Captain Cook Hotel and was able to get 9 of the 15 community jail chiefs to come together and talk about our issues. And also in attendance, we had several members of AML that are going to help us out, and our city manager was kind enough to come up and attend, which I really appreciate. And had a really good meeting. It sounds like all of us are kind of in the same boat. We saw dollar amounts between $200,000 and up that these jails are missing. $400,000 to $500,000, like our situation, was a fairly common number. And my takeaway from this was we let them know that, you know, with your direction, we're working on this and we're looking to, you know, affect some change here. And that this could potentially lead to litigation, and it could lead to closing the jail if that's what needs to happen. And so for them, I think that, at least my takeaway on it was, they want to do something, but they weren't sure what to do. And there's a few that are already on board with us. They're all in, and we've also had the opportunity to even meet with another city manager from the peninsula who's, you know, their team is with us. And so ultimately what we boiled this down to is, and you know, keep in mind, these guys have, they're just getting their heads wrapped around this. You know, they're just now starting to digest this, whereas in my particular case, I've been bashing my head on this for about 3 years. So I'm a little bit more prepared than they are, but I think we're going to get there. AML is going to help us get a letter drafted, and we're going to send it right up to the governor's office. We're going to provide our budgetary needs and what our contracts look like, so that the governor's office can start to take a good look at this. And we're going to try to get some response that way. We're going to start putting people on notice. And so the next parts for you guys is to just know that we are working on it, and we'll have more coming for you soon.
Excellent. Thank you. Couple things I wanted to note is, I don't know if you heard Chief Nichols say he hosted the meeting. He did. He organized and hosted it, and I really do appreciate that, because Greg Russell from AMLJIA, who primarily works with police departments and does other duties, but mostly police departments, said that this has been a conversation for years, but there have never been this many municipalities in the same room to actually move things forward. So thank you for that. After that meeting, I received, I think it was the next day, a text from Chief Nichols saying that the governor's office has gotten wind of the issue, and that was pretty much that. I'd like to say it wants to really meet with us, but anyway, I've gotten wind of the issue, and this afternoon I contacted Chris Noss, our lobbyist, and gave him an update, and he's going to schedule a meeting with the governor's office. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure it won't be before the holidays. And basically, my desire has to have a seat at the table to talk about the underfunding, talk about our contract, which is not really sufficient for what is being done at any of the jails. We have the same contract, but any of the jails, and also to let the governor's office know that we are serious. This is serious, and these municipalities, in particular Seward, we need to make a change. And if it's litigation, closing the jail, it'll be your decision, but we are going to have these conversations, and we're not going to stop. So Chris is going to set up that meeting, and I'll let you all know when that is. So that's where we are with the deal. Brooks came and met, and we talked about our contract and options for contracts. One thing that is in the contract or talks about man hours. That is an interesting that's language that is very interesting, as far as the state requires the police department to report how many man hours they've used for the year, meaning how many prisoners have been there. And the contract is supposed to pay accordingly. We've received the same amount for years. So obviously they don't care about the calculation that's being sent to them. And our thought is that it really should pay for the cost of the jail. The same cost is for one prisoner versus 10, because the jail has to be staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that came out of the meeting, that everyone agreed with that, and that our contracts need to change. Still becomes the underlying issue that we can't get to the table to talk about it. We're being ignored. So hoping to not be ignored anymore and take this on and move it forward. So that's where we are with the jail issue.
Thank you, Chief.
Other than that, I reported on AML conference, and then the Alaska Municipal Management Conference, which I really do appreciate being able to go, and really enjoyed it a lot. And then the rest of the time is hopefully finishing up on the budget and some other issues. That's my report unless there's any questions.
Any questions or comments? Go ahead.
I just have a couple of things that I have kind of had on my mind, and I know I've talked to you guys about them, but I did say, you know, that I would bring it up tonight to several people that have contacted me about, one, the sidewalks not being cleared from seasonal businesses, so it's just making it really difficult to get around downtown. That's the area I've noticed the majority in, but it's, I think, becoming pretty just kind of depressing for the businesses that are here, trying to keep their one area clean when the people on the other sides are not. And so, you know, I don't know what we've done in the past as far as getting it taken care of. I know that enforcement can be, you know, a little bit tricky. I think that we need to just make sure the snow is gone and then figure out how we're going to deal with it, because I feel like it's a liability issue. I mean, there's handicapped people that work downtown that can't, I've literally seen falling over, you know, it's just not good. So not only do we want to encourage people to come to Seward in the winter, but we want to take care of the people that are here, and they need to be able to walk down the street. So I don't know how we've dealt with that in the past, or if we want to have a discussion on that, but I feel it's an issue that needs to be taken care of sooner rather than later.
Since it's in Title 15, is this something that it seems like we've been asking our Planning and Zoning Commission to do a lot regarding, but I know that that is a code requirement in Title 15. Is it something that maybe community development can look at and make sure it's being followed up on, and then if we need stronger code language to enforce? Or do you want
I mean, I
counsel?
just don't think that would solve the problem. I think that the snow needs to be removed, and then we deal with the property owners accordingly, however we decide, if there's fines implemented or whatever. But I believe the snow will not be removed if we just enforce our code language, or if we, you know, just by changing language or adding language. I don't think it's going to matter.
Well, that's what I mean, is it something that needs to happen in code where we say, if you don't do that, the city will do it and bill you accordingly?
Yeah.
I don't know, but city manager's trying to make.
Thank you, first for bringing it to our attention, and then we have been damaged sidewalk. Oh, okay, so there is code language that does address, and what we don't have is a process, and we've actually we met about it today, but I have been involved in a municipality that the code, you know, the code language is there in place stipulating a time frame, which we do have in our code. And then if it was not removed, the snow not removed within that time frame, then the city would remove it and then send that business owner a bill that they would pay. And if they didn't, it was assessed to their property tax at the end of the year. There are some other provisions for some fines within this, but we are taking a look at the code, and if there does need to be any amendments to strengthen or and to provide for the process, we'll bring that forward. But I do think we have a mechanism to start, and that's get started on it.
So could we have an update in the city manager's report that first meeting in January?
Sure.
And then we can see if we need to have a work session or something from there. We'll let these, does that sound good?
Yeah,
Sounds like a-
as long as there's a mechanism in place, I think it's good that we're developing the process to get it taken care of. So, I mean, as long as everyone else feels good about that. But if that historically worked, then I guess we should do that. I tried to find some history on it and I couldn't.
I don't know if that worked here. I just want to clarify. I
Oh,
don't know if
okay.
that worked here. It worked where I was.
Right.
So we do have an ability to do something along that line. We'll have to work it out though.
Okay.
Councilmember Cuthbert?
So if we're gonna focus on sidewalks, maybe we could talk to DOT about them plowing 3rd Avenue onto the sidewalks? I mean, where does it stop? So, I mean, are we gonna require everyone up and down 3rd Avenue from downtown to the harbor to keep the cities or the states, I mean,
Which I did
That's
see the
intense.
state working on their sidewalks out of town
They
this
have
weekend,
been.
so that's been
yeah.
good. Councilmember Wells?
Yep. You said that there's a time frame in there currently. What is that time frame?
24 hours.
24 hours, yeah.
I'm sorry, 24 hours? So I appreciate Councilmember DeMoss bringing this up. I have a building downtown and have been shoveling from Washington all the way up to the coffee shop. And I gotta be honest, my back is pretty tired of it. And so if there was something we could do about that where it wasn't just in front of one space, you know, I mean, we do have businesses that shut down and there's just piles and piles and piles. And, you know, this past weekend there was people having to walk out into the street to get around multiple areas. So I think there's definitely something that needs to be done there.
Thank you. Did you have additional?
I do have one more thing, and also just back up, with that being said, I want to thank Doug for plowing in general, because you guys have been doing a really great job, the department in general. So the sidewalk issue is a separate thing, obviously. I know we've been getting a lot of snow. One other thing is the lights, and I know I've talked to administration about that. The Christmas lights in town, one of my hopes has always been to kind of make that even more, you know, nice in the winter for people. I know it's just kind of depressing here in the winter, and people have expressed to me that it would be really nice if we could really make it super wintry, pretty, holiday-y with lots of lights and stuff like that. I think we used to do some more things than we do now. I understand the elements can be an issue, but it would be really great if we could just figure out some areas that we could add additional holiday lights in areas that maybe wouldn't be issues, like just more trees in our parks, things like that. I just think that it makes a big difference for people that live here and just for people that come. And that's all I have.
Sweet. Vice Mayor?
Well, she kind of stole my thunder on that, but I've had an amazing number of people text and call me to tell thanks to the Public Works for the snow removal. It's been awesome. They couldn't believe that you guys were working all night that other night and it was plowed, and you know, I usually get all the negative stuff and I got lots of positive stuff, so that was good. Also, I tried last year and I don't think it worked, but speaking of lights, I'd like to see the Christmas tree at the bottom of Main Street lit up, but there's also a Christmas tree at Williams Park, across from Pat Williams Park, and it was dedicated to the memory of her, and several people have been asking me for a couple years, why isn't that lit up? So if you could look into that, I can talk to you about where it is and stuff. It's by those apartments there. It's important to people, as you know, we want it to be festive. So,
Thank you.
that's all I got.
Thank you. Any other comments? I have a few, just I want to point out from the manager's report, because again, if any citizen in Seward would like to know what the city's doing, the manager reports in the packets are very thorough and excellent. So I just wanted to highlight a few items. There's been no separations from the city, so that was nice to see. And the long list of full-time positions is getting whittled down, so I'm glad to see that there's a lot of progress being made there. With community development, it's good to see that they're assessing empty lots and houses within city limits for some infill development as we start to look at, you know, where we can have more homes be built with our housing problem. I'm glad to see that community development is looking at those issues. Also, I know people have been asking about updates with the Jesse Lee home property, and that we're continuing to work with the contractor and DEC for site cleanup and working on those next steps. So that's continuing to move forward. Thank you to the fire department, reminding folks not just sidewalks, but those fire hydrants. If you have a hydrant, you know, keep it clear by 3 feet. And that's just for your benefit if your either business or home has a fire. You know, so much in the Harbor Master's very thorough report is normal. It's nice to see that boats are being lifted again after the cold weather. library Nerf war update, and that's all I'm gonna say. You have to read the manager's report to find out more. And then open house for them on December 18th. And then the big one that I think, at least Sue and I think there were other council members talking about, is ice skating on Second Lake is back. So I know that the recent conditions with the snow and the rain weren't helpful, but I know people, once they saw it was cleared, that they've already been up there using it. So I just want to give a shout out to that and thank folks for getting that going again. Any other comments or questions? Next is the city attorney's report. Thank you for being with us today, and that starts on page 25.
You're welcome. Glad to be here. Most of November, at least the first 3 weeks, I was on vacation, but the legal needs of the city did not go on vacation. But, they were met by Charles Cassiola, Sam Severin, and Patrick Munson of my firm for the most part. So most of what I'm going to go over with you was performed by other folks in the office. And that went relatively smoothly, as near as I can tell. There were a few personnel items that we don't get into details with that were handled, but we did, the one that I will talk a little bit about had to do with, it's been in the news, a federal mandate for vaccines and whether that will or not apply to municipal employers. And really, it's all been tied up in federal court, but the details really turned out when we put it under the microscope is it was not a mandate to the city of Seward. So whether or not the employees are required to be vaccinated by January 4th or any other time in 2022 is really a matter, at this point, for management to decide whether they think that's a good idea or not. The basics of it were that OSHA rules, which President Biden was using to create the mandate, are not directly applicable to local governments. They only apply if, in fact, they've been officially adopted and implemented via a statewide plan by the state of Alaska. And so there is an argument that maybe the state has automatically adopted these things by the existing plan, but as we all know, the governor is not a fan of what the president did, and so in terms of the state enforcing, this just isn't going to happen. So technically, and the judge is kind of, the federal judge outside, the whole thing's all kind of tied up at the moment. So it's not like a crisis where something has to be done, or people have to worry. If people that were employees were worried that, well, we're going to have to get vaccinated, or it's just not going to happen in the short run. So that's the news on that. From the legal department, we did a little work with planning. What kind of conditions can you put on a conditional use permit? What kind of notice do you have to have for hearings? Helped put together the docs that went out for the bid on the Nash Road for electric utility improvements. I think that contract will be awarded sometime in the next 2 months. And had to deal with what the rules were for a COVID drive-through facility as a temporary structure. And there was a records request for the forensic audit that I advised on, and also looked at some comments that the Shellfish Hatchery folks had to a amendment to their existing lease that is trying to be put together. I think if you remember, kind of the big picture concept here is we've got multiple users of a single parcel of property, and it really would be better in the long run, I think, for everybody if you made that into 2 parcels with 2 separate lease agreements. So that's kind of the big picture item. It's going relatively slowly because, well, whenever you have to get 3 organizations involved with various bureaucracies, it can take a while. So, but it's moving a little bit. And then there was an ATV ordinance, and there's an opt-out provision for localities who have seen work with the chief on how that would work for Seward. And I think that kind of sums up as sort of what we're up to. Bill for October was 9,800, but that's the last. We're now into the new arrangement, which is a flat fee for a lot of stuff, and hourly rates for certain designated items. So I think it would be interesting both for our firm and for the city to see how that impacts the legal fees. You know, I don't really know. You know, it should. The thing that I like about that arrangement, I think, is I've always thought it was too bad if people were afraid to ask for help because of the cost. You know, they go, oh, you know. I mean, I've heard it so many times on the phone. You know, oh, now your meters, you know, and so. And that can be less than ideal in the long run, because if you don't ask at an appropriate time, sometimes the issue magnifies and requires a lot more work, you know, later on down the road to kind of come into things that would have been done correctly if you would have been asked. So anyway, I think it's going to be positive for everyone. We'll see if in terms of cost control, I think it'll be positive as well. So I can take questions.
I have a question off the bat. I have been watching redistricting, and now that Matt Sue's entered in the lawsuit, and we've actually had some emails from borough representation, asking if they could help or what we need to do. So what would be your advice for Seward at this point? Because I don't know if you've seen, I'm sure you've seen the maps, we're with Kodiak and pulled away from the rest of the peninsula. If we need to have a work session, or do you think we should join that lawsuit, or put a letter of intent in there? Or, I mean, how can we move forward if this is not our preferred option?
Well, right now, I think there are 3 pending lawsuits, and a clock is ticking on when to file a lawsuit. If you already know that one of the lawsuits is advocating for a plan that is the preference of the city council, then seeking to participate in that lawsuit is better than filing a duplicative action. A lot of these end up getting combined anyway, because you don't want to have inconsistent judicial opinions on it. So I imagine what will happen is all the lawsuits will be consolidated before a single Superior Court judge, and then eventually go up to the Supreme Court. Participating before the trial court can be fairly expensive in terms of if you want to put on your own case, call your own witnesses, have a lawyer there throughout the trial. These cases, there's about 5 criteria that are involved with redistricting, and certainly, compactness of geographical area is one of them. Sort of not having too much population differential, having some commonality and things like that. So these tend to get into around people actually testifying about are these criteria that they've met by the facts on the ground that are specific to the plan. And some of them can get involve complicated experts. So they eventually go up to the Supreme Court, and there certainly is a mechanism often used before the Supreme Court where you can file an independent brief as what's called a friend of the court brief, where the city is presenting to the Alaska Supreme Court their perspective on the litigation without having actually been sort of on the front lines of the trial and working with, if there's more than one plaintiff, coordinating and trying to do something like that. So, my initial response to you is that thinking about participating when the cases make their way to the Alaska Supreme Court is a way to make your voice, raise your voice, judges of the Supreme Court do read all of the briefs, and friends of the court brief, they're routinely allowed, especially with the district, because of the statewide implications of it. So I think that would be a kind of a way for Seward to participate that makes the most sense.
Is there any objection from council to have the administration work with the attorney on monitoring those timelines and our options? We aren't necessarily having this on our agenda for tonight, but the Friends of the Court brief and making sure we're meeting the timelines that are required. Is there any objection?
Okay, so we'll figure out what deadline there would be if we're going to file an independent action. And these are accelerated court cases, so they get to the Supreme Court or the trial court quickly. We'll keep the administration advised as to what the schedule is.
And I know, like I said, the Borough Assembly's reached out to Sue and I. That information was forwarded to the clerk and also the city manager. So I think that the borough would be willing to assist us. So maybe if there's opportunities for the borough to join with us on some of that, when I talked to Nils at AML, he said that, the borough has a little bit more oomph if we combine with the city. So keeping that in play would be helpful.
Sure.
Did you want to say something? I cut you off.
No, I'll speak to him afterwards. It had to do with the brief, that's all. A process, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent report. Are there any further questions for the city attorney? Seeing none. Next on the agenda is other reports and announcements. We have Court and Commerce Advisory Board quarterly report by Chair Bruce Jaffa. And that's found.
It's a lay down.
Oh, I knew I saw it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologize earlier, my name is Bruce Jaffa, outside the city, follow procedures. I'm not really good at this presentation. The previous chairs that you've had with PACAB, including our mayor, were real good at this. What I do know is I enjoy serving on the board of PACAB and making a contribution I think is valuable. I'm going to read through some of these things, notes that I made more or less myself. I think you have a handout, and my eyes don't fade. PACAB has met several times in this. I'm not going to read it because I can't read it. We're at my glasses, but we've met several times this last quarter, but we've been challenged with having a quorum in several meetings. We had empty seats. Our previous chair, Laura Snyder, was great, brought a lot of enthusiasm and organization to the board. When she left, I was voted in. At that time, I asked for an amended position, hoping that we would get a full board, and that full board then could vote on their chair, which will be in January. And you'll have to decide whether you want to encourage me to continue in that or not. We do have some applicants. We have one applicant. I don't know if they're here, but I haven't met either one of them. I've talked to them on the phone. We're not entirely sure that our seventh applicant will really be able to work because of his particular schedule. An excellent candidate. But that's a problem, and if you look at the brief, I did mention the Zoom meeting things. I'm on a advisory planning commission with the borough. It works very well for that. I think there's some downsides to it. I came to town tonight to demonstrate both my interest in serving and demonstrate the importance of what I think personal presentation is. So Zoom, as nice as it is, doesn't do that. There's a certain buy-in by going the extra mile, if you will. We've gone through our priority list. It's more or less the same as we had last year. Updated it a little bit. We've had great participation with the administration and Port Director, I don't think that's his title, but with Norm. And I think we've been able to make some real contributions in reviewing rates, making suggestions on how things could move forward. I think a big concern that I have had, and I think the board is, or the commission is coming to, the board is coming to the same position, is that success is raising other problems. The great success of the 4th of July development should not be hampered by being constrained by future growth. That's excuse me, that's a problem. If you have something, some people that want to come to an area and all of a sudden there's no place to come, they're going to lose their interest. It sort of atrophies a part of something that doesn't get nourishment anymore. So a plan for future growth is something that's going to be a real challenge for everyone. There are some opportunities, and some of the private contractors over there are looking at their own opportunities, but the city has made a tremendous investment over there in a development. It's a success story, and that sort of success adds some stress on what you do next. It should not be left to just chance. Working with planning and zoning and others, as far as what to do about future development is an ongoing activity. What things should be encouraged or prevented from happening, whether housing should be allowed, public services like fire and emergency services would be important. How are those going to be developed? So PACAB has stayed involved with that, and we'll continue to look at that. Some of the things that we're very proud of is that I think PACAB drove very hard to work with the city utility, the electric utility, and get the metering change, which has really encouraged solarization, if you will. I believe there were 15 people, or 15 hookups this last year. There'll be more this coming year. So I think that's a great thing for a lot of reasons, not just carbon reduction, but less stress on the utility, and frankly taking a resource that would be going to waste otherwise. The sun. It's not going to waste, but we don't get enough. We're disappointed that the heat pump project that would have heated this building, the library, and the annex could not be carried forward. I understand, and I think we all do, that 2020 had some economic problems and projects had to be prioritized. There was a growth in the budget on that one. And you obviously have to have something to use to build on. I'm not entirely sure that those budgets were completely, weren't comparing apples with apples. As there was a growth in the budget, there was also a change in the project. But that's still a project that has legs, and it should be looked at. And it's a giant benefit to the community, both energy conservation and a demonstration project. What the Sea Life Center has done, you left the Sea Life Center, Daryl Shakermeyer and others who have been down there, is world class. They heat that entire building with seawater. The heat from seawater, extracted from seawater. Our company used to be involved in repairing boilers all the time. That's gone away. So that sort of thing has a real benefit, and people in the community understand that. And outside the community, they look at it with envy. My wife and I and others downtown would have always liked to see a heated sidewalk. You talked about the sidewalks in the snow, and the ladies in our office do a lot of snow shoveling, of snow that blows in from someplace else. It's kind of like being in North Dakota, you shovel Montana snow. So, there are things in the heat pump and alternative energy things that should be considered. One of the really innovative projects was the Lowell Point Hydro, or pardon me, Lowell Canyon Hydro, but it required a buy-in from the city to get the Corps of Engineers to spend the money to put in monitoring along with the monitoring that they're going to be doing for the Lowell Canyon pump. And that project's moving forward, and that's a $50 million+ project that should have great impact for the benefit to the city. But I'm a fossil fuel guy, but I am so far into supporting alternative energies, I can't believe how far I've come. There's no reason not to do it. You know, I can have my hot rod car and still have my solar panel. No reason the city can't do the same thing. I think that's, you know, we've talked, the harbor has done some great improvements and continues to do improvements. They've knocked off a lot of things when we went through our priority list. It's amazing how many of the things that were on the wish list from years have gone by have been completed, and completed on budget and time and to the standard that was expected. I think the harbor department deserves tremendous credit for overseeing that. And council, of course, has been supportive of all that. And incidentally, a lot of new faces on council. It's nice to see a vibrant group. You know, it's not important to have all old timers like me involved in city government. It's really nice to see some returning people and what you got here. We've talked about halibut bycatch. I know it's not an automatic thing for city council to be involved with, but it's a tragedy. It's something that the city has occasionally stepped forward and said, you know, we're against that. I know we talked to our congressional delegation and tell them that this is not something we should give up on. This is absolutely a crime. And PACAB listens. We have a lot of people who are involved in the harbor and the fishing industry. We have a new member who's, you know, really brings the fishing industry to us. We have tourism. We have a really diverse board. We have tourism, housing. I don't know what I am, a brick and mortar guy. So I think we're looking forward to anything that council throws to us to take a look at. If we can have those projects, I think we can encourage more participation, and we'll strive to do whatever we can to help the city. If that, I think that really sums up the last 3 months. 2020 was, you know, I had 20 months of, I don't know what happened. I still wear a mask, fully vaccinated, but I don't know what happened, but I'm not going to quit.
Well, I know you guys do a lot of work. You're the workhorse, one of the workhorses of our boards and commissions. Does anyone have any questions for the chair? Thank you for your service. It's been a lot of years. I do have a couple follow-up questions for administration based on that report. You know, it was my understanding that there was going to be some flow data collected by the Corps. Can you follow up and see what was going on there? And then I know that we did request for an extension with the heat pumps. Do you have an update on that?
We did receive an extension. It's through December. However, I'm requesting another extension because part of the reason that they stated was because the infrastructure bill money, they figured by then we'd have some answers. We don't. And so I do believe they'd be willing to extend again.
Yeah, if we could ask that to be extended again, especially that seems like that would be an ideal project for some of the monies coming out of federal.
Absolutely.
Great. Yeah, thank you again, Board Jeffa. Next on the agenda is Alaska Municipal League Local Government Conference Travel Reports. I myself went, Councilmember Osenga was there, Councilmember Demas, Councilmember Casagrande. I know that the city manager's report is in the city manager's packet. I might just highlight a few things if that's okay, and then we can go through the list. The night before the conference started, the city manager and I met with the city lobbyist, and we got good advice about not only the federal funding coming down, just because it was our state lobbyist, the city's state lobbyist, I should clarify, but he does have his feelers in on the federal funding, and we did talk about state and federal visits and some strategy along with that. The next morning I did meet with Nils prior to the conference starting, and we talked about redistricting, and we also talked about the jails. So he's been a good advocate for us, and thank you for working with AML on that. I attended, just quickly, I think we were all very busy attending everything and taking good notes. I attended the Alaska Municipal Climate Network. I did a half of the housing and homelessness and half with benefiting from the SEMT, which is some of the medical ambulance money that didn't necessarily pertain to us, so I went to both. Encouraging Alaska business development, municipal bond packages and cash management. I went to the Port and Harbor's coastal infrastructure, and I will note, I wrote a couple notes that there were lots of pictures of Seward in that. So good job with our harbor master and our marine facilities around the city. And then Wednesday morning, I did go to the grant writing workshop and got some really good information. They had a panel of grant writers and had some question and answer, so that was good. And then, lots of just good networking. Oh, one thing I did want to highlight is I attended the legislative position committees, so I was able to provide some information to the city manager, and then she stayed for Wednesday and voted, had our paddle to vote on those things. So it's good that all the communities can get together and talk about those things. So I'll go to Councilmember Demas.
Sure, yeah. Let's see, I attended the first 2 days, I think I was gone, I left the third day halfway through, but the first one that I attended was childcare and early learning, in hopes to kind of get some information on how to support local childcare facilities, since we're kind of in that predicament here in Seward and trying to support that our group Hyper here. It was interesting and a little bit despairing, because they, kind of, the moral of the story is that it's just a flawed system and a bad business model. That you really do, most child care facilities really do need help from their community or some sort of partnership to make it happen. One takeaway that I got from it that I thought was great, because I know one of the biggest struggles with having a child care facility is just getting employees, and so one of the topics was just developing local pathways to childcare professions. So, in Seward, how can we get people trained for CPR, that kind of thing, to be working, in the childcare facility if and when we do have one. I have a little note here, community center with childcare. I think they were discussing, some communities kind of do that combination, and I know that since we are talking about community center in Seward, maybe that's something we kind of want to throw around as well, while watching what Hyper does. We'll see. The other meeting I went to was a refresher on the Open Meetings Act, which was good for me because I'm fairly new here still, and just being in a small town, lines can get blurry, so that was a good refresher to kind of, help clarify, what is okay and what is not. I also attended the Encouraging Alaska Business Development. Buy Alaska is an awesome organization. They were just really stressing how much money it really does equal when you just spend a little bit of money in your hometown or your home state. So I think with the holiday season and just the times in general, it's even more important to just shop local. So I thought that was a really great message to take away as well. But other than that, it was just really nice to spend time with the council members, and I think we showed a good force from Seward there, so it was nice. It was good.
And before I turn to you, I did forget to mention that we had Brendan Hickok there with AMLJA sat at our table with us, and also former Assistant City Manager Kirsten Bussell was also there. So it was fun to have a strong contingency of pro-Seward folks around. Go ahead.
Yes. So I attended the entire time. I was able to stay the morning after and attend the voting with the city manager. It was a really great opportunity for networking and an icebreaker for all of us with the administration council to be able to be together off the dais. So, and I'm always very grateful for the citizens, the taxpayers. I understand we're there on taxpayer dimes. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to go All in all, this year I've gone to quite a few AMLs, and this year was the first year it was kind of like stuck in the past. Like every year I've ever gone to AML, it's kind of like, okay, this is the issue, and these are all the really exciting, motivating things that we're doing to find solutions. And this year it was kind of like, well, let's just talk about the last year and everything that went wrong. And it could have been a coincidence because I don't think I've picked the right sessions to go to this year. In the past, I've gone to some sessions, especially the PERS one, I'll never forget that one, that were very helpful. But I won't bore anybody because you've heard most of the sessions of what most of us attended. But the one that was the most eye-opening for me was the Alaska Small Business session of encouraging Alaska business, and the Buy Alaska program was awesome. That was very proactive and very exciting to hear, the SBA encouraging us to shop local. I was at the post office today and the line was huge and long, so I do highly encourage everybody to shop local and go downtown, go to the small boat harbor, shop local. The biggest takeaway from the encouraging Alaska business was the lack of workforce. And it was just just a problem. But there was really, I didn't feel like that much of a solution. They said, they just kept on talking about how it's only going to become a bigger problem because the SBA, and I'm glad Tim's here because he's going to follow me up and hopefully he'll have all the solutions because he always does. But what SBA was saying was, we stopped receiving the unemployment in this month and we didn't see the workforce numbers come back up. And I was there because I do property management and I know there's a lot of rental assistance still out there. So, for example, in Seward, for those people that normally maybe would have worked 2 or 3 jobs to make their living through the summer, well, if you have rental assistance and your rent's paid for a whole year, why would you get a second or third job? And there was also no talk about the J1 programs or the legislation for to encourage those J1 students. So I just really, I stayed a little bit after and asked the SBA guy about, or maybe I asked the question in public. I don't know, the vitamin D lack is totally getting to me. But anyways, they didn't seem to think that either of those were the problem. So yeah, I'm just really grateful for the opportunity. It's always such a great experience. We get to stay in the Captain Cook, which is an amazing hotel, and there's always a gingerbread house going up that time of year, so it's really become an aesthetic thing to really enjoy. So thank you.
And I'll just say on behalf of Councilmember Osenga, I know he took full advantage of the time also. So next on the agenda is Tim Dillon.
Good evening, everyone. Tim Dillon, Executive Director, Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District. I was glad to hear just now, going around the room with what you all learned and didn't learn at AML. Whenever a body like this has the opportunity to mix and mingle with other folks, you find out that a lot of the things, there's so many similarities. It doesn't matter how big or how small a community you have. And I work very closely with Nils, and it really makes a big difference to be able to talk through some of those things. And you just don't get the same interaction on Zoom as you do face-to-face. So that was really good. I'll comment on your stuff here in a couple of minutes because I do have some answers for you. The first thing I wanted to do was apologize. I was only coming to speak for 3 minutes, and then we had a variety of other things that happened today. I was here for meetings most of today, and I also have a meeting with Liz tomorrow morning. Liz is going on our board, so welcome to our board, and we're actually going to do a couple of hour orientation for her tomorrow, similar to what we do with all our board members. But I also was hoping that John was here, but I hear he's on a cruise ship someplace, so I don't feel bad for him at all. But I'm going to pass this on to the city manager. This is just a small thank you from our board to him. So a couple of other things before I get into what I really want to talk about was we have started, and this was based from some discussions coming out of AML, the rail belt mayors all get together periodically, and they all talk about common concerns and issues down in Juneau and down in DC. We've been asked to help coordinate with all the coastal communities. So we've actually had several meetings so far, and we actually have another meeting coming up, but it's an opportunity for the mayors and the city managers to talk and see, you know, what are those common concerns, whether it be the Alaska Marine Highway, some of the fishing concerns, some of the transportation things, just a variety of those same things that you brought up, to be able to speak in one voice. So all of a sudden, when you've got, you know, Southwest, the Kenai Peninsula, Southeast, and Prince William Sound all talking together, it makes a very big difference. So I wanted to make you aware of that, that we have started that, and Seward has been participating with that, which is great. The other thing is, and I'm not sure if Mayor Terry has seen it yet or not, the mayors on the Kenai Peninsula all want to start to get together also. So I've been asked to host a meeting similar to what we do with the city managers. We normally bring the city managers in every couple of months just to go upstairs, close the door, and be able to talk through some things and see, you know, whether it's healthcare issues, workforce issues, all those different kinds of things. But the mayors are going to try and get together in the beginning of January. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. The Industry Outlook Forum, which you all hosted here a couple of years ago, is going to be at the Kenai Visitor Center this year. It is January 6th. There is a little bit of a handout that your city clerk has, or you can just go to kped.org and be able to register. We are going to have it in person and virtual, depending on whether you can be there the whole day or want to be there the whole day. I just ask that if you are going to be there in person, to make sure that you register in advance, because the cool part is everything's paid for. So your breakfast is paid for, your lunch is paid for. All you have to do is come with an open mind, a stack of paper and a pencil, and you're able to gather a lot of information. But we want to make sure that we get a good registration on things. We have an unbelievable list of topics this year. And again, it's what we try and do is give a picture of what's going on with the economy, not only on the entire Kenai Peninsula, but also around the state, so people have a good idea. So just quickly, just so that you have an idea of some of the presentations, real estate has been a huge, huge issue the last 2 years. Not only lack of enough properties out there, but also how much has turned over and things. So we actually had the president-elect for the Alaska Association of Realtors going to speak. Sarah Leonard, the head of tourism. In fact, you all probably are familiar with KPTMC, which used to be the tourism marketing arm for the Kenai Peninsula. We've been working with Sarah on creating a chapter here on the peninsula, which hopefully will take its place and be able to do some things a little differently. Robert Venables is going to come and give an update on the Marine Highway system and what's happening with that. I don't want to talk about COVID at the Economic Development Forum. Instead, we're going to bring in the president and CEO for the Alaska State Hospital and Nursing Home Association to talk about the economic impact that medical has on each and every one of our communities and on the Kenai Peninsula in particular. John Bittner, the CEO of Alaska Small Business, is actually going to do a presentation on transition and succession planning for businesses. You look around the room and a lot of us are starting to turn a little gray, and some of us either want to sell our business or we want to give it to our kids or whatever. There's a process to go through that. So what we want to do is John's going to come in and talk everybody through that and try and help with that. We also have, we'll have an update from Hillcorp. The lunch speakers are, I'm not sure if anybody has heard about the Kenai Peninsula Solar Farm. We've been working real closely on 3 different projects that have renewable energy. So we actually have at lunch Brad Janorski, who is the CEO for Homer Electric, and Jen Miller, the CEO of Renewable IPP. They're going to do a joint presentation on the Kenai Peninsula Solar Farm that's being projected out right now. The head of Alaska Manufacturing, the head of Alaska Oil, Gas and Oil, Kara Moriarty. The statewide SEDS, just like we've done a comprehensive economic development strategy, and we do that every 5 years, the state of Alaska has to be working on theirs right now too. They're going to kick it off at our conference, at our forum. It's due to the federal government in September, so it'll give us an opportunity to make sure all of our concerns and interests on the Kenai Peninsula are put in there. And from here locally, we're actually going to get an overview of Alutiiq Pride, the Marine Institute. As most of you know, we're working very closely with them on an expansion project to try and assist with them. And I just mentioned to your friendly attorney over there that if I can help at all with that contract, we actually started 6 months ago. Pat Pitney and with the university. If it's not moving fast enough, let me know and we can help with that, because I actually met with Pat about that lease agreement to make sure that that can move along. So we had a whole variety of things. The one thing I didn't bring up though is we're going to have a presentation on mariculture. Here's the cool part about mariculture. You've all seen all this loads of money in different projects and things that are available through the entire country. We have to remember too, you know, we're just one small part out of all the states applying for these different kinds of dollars. So a group of us, there's 5 partners in this project, and it is the 4 economic development districts, so it'd be Southeast, Southwest, Prince William Sound, and the Kenai Peninsula, plus the Alaska Fishing Development Foundation. We all put our heads together trying to figure out what we could do to try and help with mariculture. We wrote a proposal that there was 600 and some different proposals that went to the federal government from all over the country. Today they announced the 60 finalists, and I'm very pleased to tell you we're one of the 60.
Nice.
So we have gotten initial funding of $500,000, so that between now and March we have to put all the details together. So we've got a 30+ page document we've worked on already, but now we want to take it that next step. For example, we want to start, and one of the things I'm going to be doing between now and March is going to be meeting with a variety of different people. I was actually with Jeff Hedrick for a couple of hours today talking through some of what we can be doing over here in Seward. Taking some of the cottage industry things that are out there with mariculture and helping develop them to full-blown businesses. The ask of how much we have asked for this project that we want, and hopefully we will be successful, is $50 million. Wow. That's the kind of money you need to jumpstart something like mariculture. And some of you might be like, what the hell is mariculture? It's seaweed, it's kelp, it's algae, it's shellfish, it's oysters. And it's been so interesting. I've learned so much. I didn't even realize that some of the things coming out of mariculture right now, the folks over in China and Japan are starting to look at how to use it in certain cosmetics. So this, hopefully, with this kind of, if we're able to land this, it will help the entire Kenai Peninsula, the entire coastal communities from southeast all the way through to southwest. So we're really, really pleased about that. And when I mentioned it to your mayor earlier today, because we just found out this morning that it was going to be announced today, she told me I had to share that with you.
Yeah.
Because I think it's, you know, again, we're all looking at these bigger picture things saying, are we going to get any of this, or is it all going to go somewhere else? I can tell you, besides that, so that one, we know we have that one. We know we have the $500,000, and we are one of the 60 finalists for that. Nobody else can jump in there. It's just those 60 from the entire country. We've got a project that we're working on, the harbor, an electric project. that we're working, my staff is working with the administration here on putting together the package. We have an expansion project with Alutiiq Pride on their facility. In Kenai, we have a project that we're working on with them over at their airport. In Soldotna is pretty far along. Their application is already in, and it's gone through the first 2 phases. In fact, I was with Stephanie Queen, their city manager, earlier today. They're entering into phase 3, which that next set of questions and defense and things happens this Thursday. Theirs is on a downtown kind of a redevelopment of downtown. When you've been to Soldotna and you know where the amphitheater is, if you go from the amphitheater all the way down to the bridge along the water, they want to try and create something similar to anybody that's been to San Antonio before, and you have the river walk. So again, public and private partnership, trying to build some things. We've got a couple of projects down in Homer that we're working on with the HERC, which is their facility that they need to do something with. We also have the Bluff Erosion Project in Kenai that we're working on. And then we have, we actually have a meeting tomorrow afternoon about 4 other projects. One of them is Salteshi Trails. I'm sure whether it's you all that go or you bring your kids there to go skiing or different races and things, there's a project in Salteshi Trails. The Pratt over in Homer, a big project with them. And then a project that ties in a variety of unincorporated communities here on the peninsula, all with trail upgrades and signage. So that was another part of what I was meeting with the folks up in Moose Pass about, because they have some concepts and things. And then the last big project we're working on is the Long Trail, which would go from Seward all the way up through to the middle part of the state. So as you can see, we've got a lot of things that are going on. And I have to tell you, I've been coming to your meetings for years now. You guys are really impressive right now. You really are. It's like you're burning on all cylinders. And I got to tell you, I know your city manager and administration has something to do with it. A lot of it's you guys, but they're getting stuff done. Because every time I pick up the phone and call, or they call me because they heard something and they're like, Tim, can you help with this or that? We've been able to try and make things work. Workforce is an issue. Workforce is going to continue to be an issue. There's a variety of us that are working on the J1 situation. We're working with the congressional delegation on that. J1s affect so much more than just one job, and that's the part that we're trying to get the federal group to understand. They look at it as somebody coming here from XYZ country, working one job from 8 to 4, going home and enjoying themselves, and that's it. That's not what happens with a J1. They all impact a minimum of 2 jobs, and some of them 3 jobs, and they work 7 days a week. But again, we're trying to educate our friends in DC about that. Child care is an issue. It's that plain and simple. The permitting part, the licensing part, it's a serious issue. But probably the biggest issue is the change that has happened over the last couple of years. Folks, there isn't going to be anything that we knew. We knew entry-level positions or minimum wage jobs. They're not going to exist anymore. Employees have employers over a barrel now. And people need to realize that. And either you as business owners are going to change, or they're going to help you change, and you're going to be out of business. Because there's got to be some flexibility. And one of the things that we've been doing is helping communities with that. We were over in Homer here a couple of weeks ago talking through things so that people know, Liz, you have to make your operation, your business, look different than the people down the road. And it's not as if you want to compete with them, but you have to understand what you want and what you need. You also have to be able to put pencil to paper to say, okay, we've always been open 7 days a week, X number of hours. Sit down and really do some thinking. Does it make sense? Are you better off only being open 5 days a week or 4 days a week? Try and do that. Partner with other people. That's going to be key, is being able to partner. If you've got like people and like kinds of operations, work with each other. It doesn't make any sense if you can't get a burger or something to eat on a Sunday afternoon. Somebody's got to be open. And that's where, you know, I think you had an outstanding executive director for your chamber. I think Kat's going to do a great job. I think the chamber and working together with all those businesses to make sure that that communication is there, it's not going to solve all your problems, but it's going to help you along the way. But remember that workers, take a step back and figure this. How much is it going to cost me if Joe or Susie gets up and walks out? To give them an extra 50 cents an hour, or give them an extra whatever, or come up with a plan that we can start giving, you know, if you do what you're supposed to do and you show up every day, you know, this month, there's an extra $50 bonus. There's an extra $100 that we're going to open up a retirement fund, you know, a simple IRA or something. You know, think of those things. Get creative, because you're only as good as your staff. It's that simple, and we've really learned that a lot. You also, next year's going to be different than this year, and I'm not sure how much, but one of the things that we heard a lot was exactly what somebody said earlier, and it may have been Liz, I can't remember, about if they were going to get, if you were getting, or it might have been you, Rissy, if you were going to get support financially for your housing, you know, why get that second job or that third job? What we heard a lot was a lot of minimum wage folks or hourly folks did Alaska this past year. And the tourism numbers show it. A lot of the folks, younger people and some of the folks that you know, enjoy working in the hospitality industry, they did Alaska. They were like, you know what, I'm covered. I've never gotten a chance to take the month of July and go cruise and, you know, go hiking and things. They did that. So hopefully when you're ready and they're ready, you'll have changed a little bit, because we're going to have to make those adjustments in order for us to survive on some of those things. Thank you all very much. We're more than happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions? That was lots to think about. We appreciate your time and attention to Seward. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Next on the agenda is the 2021 Virtual High School Student Exchange with Obihiro, Japan. Do you want to see that?
Do you want to see it? I hope you want to see it.
Yeah, are we ready?
Josh has put a lot of time and effort
Excellent.
into
Turn the
it.
lights off.
And can everyone see it all right?
So is that too dark?
Hello.
Is that okay?
You can use it yourself. I don't know how to turn up the volume anymore. It's just music. Second.
Brenda, is there a way to put the camera on the TV? I don't know what's being shown to the public.
We were planning to upload this to the website, just so people can watch it, because we'd like to inspire our own students to apply for the program.
No, I mean right now, for people watching the
Oh,
meeting.
no, I'm sorry, the camera's fixed on the wall. I'm sorry, I can't.
We just got reprimanded for eating candy, so. Just checking what the public's able to see. They're not seeing this, so I think there's a lot of dead time. So our former city manager, Jim Hunt, just reprimanded me for eating candy.
Oh.
Just maybe other pings of people's phones going off too.
Or if we were all eating candy.
So the public didn't see that. If we're gonna show presentations, if there'd be a way to integrate that a little bit better. You know, I'm sorry for the public that I was eating candy on the dais. It sounds like that was offending some people. But potentially just to double check, so that's gonna be on the website, so.
We're gonna put it on the website, we're gonna send it to Obihiro, to the
Okay.
city of Obihiro, and I think their assembly, you know, they have like 42-member assembly over there. I think they'll be pretty interested in seeing it, and it'll help promote their program on their side, so.
So are they gonna be sending us a video? Will that also be on our website?
If we receive one, we will upload it.
That'd be really helpful, thank you. Oh, and I just got a heart from our former city manager, so I think he was trying to shame me about eating candy, so excuse me that I had to. Anyways, appreciate that very much. Next on the agenda, let's get to something important and open up the public hearing. So Resolution 2021-129. Could we read the title into the minutes, please?
Resolution 2021-129 is adopting the City of Seward 2022 operating budget and setting the mill rate. This resolution had public hearings on November 22nd and December 6th, was amended on December 6th, and is coming tonight for a third public hearing and approval.
Thank you, and I know we have had a number of meetings about this. This will be our third public hearing. We've had multiple work sessions, but it starts on page 28, and I would like the city manager and administration just to do an overview for folks that are maybe curious about what we did at the last public hearing, where we are with things, talk about our third quarter numbers, and just kind of an overall review of what we're dealing with today.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On page 30 is a resolution that we'll be adopting this evening with the operating revenues and then the operating expenditures before depreciation. You'll notice on page 31, this is the amendments that were made are reflected on this page as far as totals are. Those amendments are listed on page 41, and as you remember, most of them were reflective of changes to health insurance, and then general fund indirect. And the general fund was a library amendment, 2 library amendments, but they were equal, they totaled, so it did not change anything in the general fund. And then 3 amendments in the harbor, 2 in SMIC, and 1 in electric. That is the total. So the operating revenues for the general fund, including the general fund net transfers, $14,602,177. That is also, you'll notice on page 31, the general fund is also balanced, the same total for the expenditures. And then the the enterprise funds are listed as well. Just a reminder that with the enterprise funds, they're not required to be budgeted because they're ran as a business and operated as a business, so they do not they do not balance in the same manner in which the general fund has to operate.
Great, thank you very much. So before we have questions for administration or changes, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Everyone has 5 minutes to speak if they wish. There's no sign-in for this item. Is there anyone in the public wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. So now we are back to the dais. We can open it up for discussion. We can ask administration questions. If there's any motions that need to be made, I'll look around and see what the wishes of the council are. Councilmember.
Mayor Terra, I'd like to make a motion that we amend the amount budgeted for the feasibility study from $100,000 to $50,000 for the rec center.
Okay, I'll go ahead and second for discussion. I'll let you speak to that.
What I'd like to see, this is something that, I'll be honest with you, I considered having removed from the budget, but this is something that needs to be figured out for the community one way or the other. And I just think that based on the presentations that were made to us about this, and I think some work that maybe community development and maybe Parks and Rec can do together, and possibly, maybe get some of the other players in town that are already here that have facilities that take care of some of a community center's requirement. We have the senior center that has a place for the seniors to go and activities for them. We have the Boys and Girls Club. We have AvTech when we can get back into a mode and find out exactly where they're at with things that are available to people in the community. So I think if we can look at some of those first before we dive into spending outside money, or money outside of the community, we can look at some of the feasibility ourselves, and maybe through community development, Parks and Rec, partnering, we can take a look at some of those things before we get into any kind of a contract for a further study.
Councilmember?
I just have a question to the maker of the motion. To keep the budget balanced, did you want to make a decrease in revenues?
That's why you guys are here. I don't have a specific one, but yes, I guess to keep the general fund budget balanced, we would need to do that. So I don't have that as part of my motion, but I am open to suggestions.
Okay. If I may, Madam. The reason I ask is you could lower revenues, or I didn't know if you wanted spending to go the $50,000 to be spent on something else. So that's,
I did not.
okay. Thank you.
And we could always, depending on how this motion works out, we could always have that further discussion. And the city manager did say if we did have amendments prior to final adoption of this resolution, if we could have a recess for them to work on those. So
Okay.
that's
Awesome. That's great, thank you.
Is there further discussion regarding the motion on the floor? Go ahead.
I just have a question to administration. Obviously, you guys, I'm assuming budgeted $100,000 for the feasibility study because somebody told you that that's approximately what it would cost. Are we jeopardizing the study being completed by decreasing this by $50,000?
The 100,000 was basically an estimate. We have heard that it can be done for a little bit less, and then also Valdez is 250,000. So the thought is it is a placeholder for funding, and then when we issue the RFP, then we would know the exact amount of the RFP. But it is, in essence, a placeholder for funding, if that makes sense.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
So I guess my question would then be, because that's an excellent question. So say we had $50,000 in the budget, if we went out for RFP, got, I mean, you work on the scope of what you're asking for, that'll, decide on what the cost potentially could be. And you came back from funding, it would be $50,000 budgeted, and then it could potentially come out of the undesignated funding budget or some other revenue.
Yes, that is correct.
So we'd still have to approve any.
Yes.
Did you have a follow-up?
No, I was just gonna point out that we still have to approve whatever, when the RFP goes out, so.
Councilman Kessler?
So just a point of clarification, I know you mentioned that if we make any amendments, do we need to take a recess before we vote on it, or do?
So we would take the city manager asked me, if we made amendments this evening that passed, before taking up the final resolution, we would have a
gotcha.
short
Okay.
recess.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, I think we're ready for the vote.
Voting on the amendment to decrease feasibility study from 100,000 to 50,000. Casagrande,
No.
McClure,
Yes,
DeMoss,
No.
Wells,
No.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That amendment has failed.
Are there any other questions, discussions, amendments? I think we're ready to have the main motion on the floor.
Voting on the main motion to approve resolution 2021-129. Calhoun,
Yes.
Wells,
So we're voting on the whole resolution.
Yes.
sorry, the 2022 budget.
Yep, got it.
Casagrande,
Yes.
McClure,
yes,
DeMoss,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
Your budget is approved.
Next on the agenda is Resolution 2021-130. It is already on the floor. We've had a number of this will be our third public hearing. We've had a number of meetings already, and you can look to page 140 of your packet. And again, if the city administration could just encapsulate it. Oh, go ahead, Reed.
Okay, thank you. Resolution 2021-130 is adopting the City of Seward 6-year capital improvement program. This resolution had a public hearing on November 22nd. Is coming tonight for a second public hearing and approval.
Thank you. So if the city administration could just do a roundup.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the previously the council adopted an ordinance that required a 6-year capital improvement program that be a separate legislation from the budget, but really it's a part of the budget. So this is the first year putting that into place for the 6th year. As we spoke about at a previous, I think it was the November 22nd meeting, I'm not quite certain, but this is the first year. I do believe the process will be refined and better even next year, and with more discussion from you. My intent is to bring it to you earlier than I did this year, but as you know, there were some changes along the way. So this is brought before you, and it has been a compilation working with the department heads on projects for future funding. I will say that at this time, most of them do not have funding with the exception of the harbor. And part of why we wanted to put this on the list, one, it's a need that we've identified, and also it will be included, and we'll go into this later on with the legislative priorities, but it will be included in the information for the legislative priorities because of all the infrastructure funding. We're not quite sure how projects are going to be chosen, so we want to identify them as a priority of the council by you adopting the CIP. I should say this isn't exactly the way we're doing it with what I just said. This is new. It's brand new, I think probably for all municipalities in Alaska. I did have monthly meeting with the managers, and also came out of what they're doing as well. With Kenai spoke about what they intend to do and how they intend to include it in priorities. I'm not sure if I answered that.
Nope, that was perfect, thank you very much. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the public hearing and look around. Is there anyone wishing to speak to this topic? People are shaking their heads because they don't want me to call on them. But hearing and seeing none, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. What are the wishes of the council? Is there further discussion? Is there questions? Is there motions to be made? I think we're ready for a vote, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Voting on the approval of resolution 21-130 for the capital improvement plan. Casagrande,
Yes.
Demas,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Good job, everyone. We're gonna break and applause. All right, next on the agenda is Resolution 2021-144. Madam Clerk, can you read that title into the minutes?
Resolution 2021-144 is approving the calendar year 2022 legislative priorities.
And we're gonna need a motion and a second to get this one on the floor.
I'll move for the approval of Resolution 2021-144.
I will second.
Great, and I'll turn it over to administration. That starts on page 206.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is a compilation of really the projects that you've been talking about already, that we've talked about through the year before I got here, and it's a compilation of those projects. The one thing that I would ask for an amendment is regarding the replacement of ductile iron piping in the water department. I have language that would clarify this, and I'm going to read it and then I can give it to the clerk if she wishes. But replacement of galvanized and transite, in parentheses, AC asbestos pipe and cement, mains with ductile iron water main piping in the water department.
I'll get that motion on the floor.
I'll make a motion to adopt the city manager's language to amend the water piping replacement.
I'll second it.
Great, thank you. Madam Clerk, you have that. And then do you want to explain that? I'll look to the city manager. Do you want to just mention why there's the update?
It really does clarify. In fact, I thought we were replacing ductile iron piping, and that's the other way around. We are replacing what we have with ductile iron piping. So it clarifies. The question came up, and it makes more sense with this. And I think if I may, can I touch on? Okay. This year also, our intent is to You know these.
Let's go ahead.
Okay.
And we'll just take a vote on that.
Oh, sorry.
And then we'll get back to the main motion.
Okay, voting on the motion to amend the water main pipes. Demas,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Casagrande,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
Now we'll let you finish that.
Okay. That prompted, having a more description prompted what my thought was about this. So you know these two documents, and it is our plan to create a document similar to this that has these priorities in it, and along with it will be more information regarding the priorities. And I think, the picture tells a story, so we'll have pictures along with that as well. And that's why it's better to have the language clear.
I might just add to that, and those will be available for our legislative trips to both Juneau and DC as takeaways for those representatives to have a better picture of what we're working for.
And our thought is take these two so they can have more information about sewer and all the great things going on here.
Good stuff. Is there any more questions or discussion? Go ahead.
I do have a question so I'm assuming that the legislative priorities was compiled based on this survey that everybody took, and I don't see, and maybe there's just something I'm missing, so clarification, but I don't see the extension of the harbor Z float on the priorities. It's float extension project in harbor for Z float. I'm just referring to the survey that we took so I'll back up and I'll just say, how did we get the fire department on our legislative priorities if it scored the same as the Z float? So that would be my first question. And my follow-up is, do we have the fire department facility on here because we're thinking that maybe it's going to co-locate and go with Public Works, or are we talking like two buildings? Sorry.
That's okay. Honestly, at this time, we don't have a firm plan for it. We do know that we need a replacement building. Co-location is a great idea. Also, two buildings might be a great idea as well. We don't have the complete picture of it because we haven't done a feasibility study. We do know that it is a priority because there is, not all the fire trucks can be in the building, and also that there are structural issues within the existing building, so that we have a need to replace that building. From what, it has been a priority on the legislative priorities for a number of years, so it was included here as well.
And then the first part of that was the Z float.
Okay, I'm sorry, the Z
Yeah,
float.
that's okay.
I actually don't know.
So the legislative priorities legislation, the resolution in front of you, this list was compiled, and then we had our newest council member that I sent him the survey after we created the resolution itself, and so that's why the Z float was not on the list, because that was an item that was added. The only other note I would make is on page 210, there's items that are listed as other. So council members were provided a pre-filled list of basically multiple choice, and then there was a text box. And I should make note that the Public Works facility was indicated there as well. And then there was discussion about the jail also. So those other items were already included in the bullet points that are listed in the resolution. Yeah, that's why the Z float isn't in the resolution, because it was, Councilmember Wells filled it out after we created the resolution itself. So we didn't intentionally omit it.
So based on that, should it be added?
The council would like, sure.
I'd like to make a motion to add under funding for construction of new fire department facility under section 1, sorry, float extension project in the harbor for Z float. Funding for float
I'll second
extension
that.
project in the harbor for Z float.
Is that language sufficient for,
Yes, thank you.
so and just, oh, did you wanna make some comments on the motion?
No, I guess just, I know it's not, like, in case I want to amend my amendment, just for clarification, can you tell me what, there were two other, others? And you said one was the jail and one was,
The Public Works facility, construction of a new Public Works facility.
Which is on there.
which is on there?
Already there.
Okay, and would the funding for the jail, is this an appropriate place to add that? And at what point do we have too many where it's too much? Is that okay to ask at this
Well,
amendment?
let's deal with the Z float amendment.
First, okay.
And then I agree with you because I have that same question.
Okay.
Let's just, so could you read back the motion language for the Z float amendment, please?
So the amendment would be to add another bullet that says float extension project, funding for the float extension project in harbor for Z floats.
And I'll just look to administration, is that language descriptive enough?
Yes.
Madam Clerk, could we call for a vote on that, please?
Voting on that amendment, McClure,
Yes.
Casagrande,
Yes.
Demas,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Wills,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
And then again, I think that we, as we've heard today, we're gonna be really advocating with other communities around the state for fully funding our jail. So to your question, would this be a good place, or will you be bringing a separate resolution back, or,
I think this is a good place. It's there, the full funding of the ADOC, in order to remove. I think that this is acceptable on here, and we will be bringing forth other legislation at a later date.
do we wanna take a quick recess? Is there specific language
Yeah,
to suggest?
I'd like to do that. Thank you.
So, it is 1 minute to 9 o'clock. Let's meet back here at 9:04.
This isn't
We're ready. Thank you. I'll call the meeting back onto the record, and I'll turn it over to administration. Thanks for taking a look on like that and making sure that the language was sufficient. Could you speak to that, please?
Sure, thank you. I do believe it is sufficient. We're questioning whether it need to reflect anything about contracts, a different type of contract being in place. But I think at the end of the day, what we're focused on is the full funding, and we'll work through the contract part. But no matter what, we want full funding of a contract. I do believe it's sufficient.
So I'd like to make a motion to add okay, well, I'll do this for now and then I can be corrected. Add a bullet point under the first bullet point, so making this the second bullet point, to add the language, full funding of the Alaska Department of Corrections in order to return to 100% funding of the operational costs associated with operating the Seward Community Jail.
So that's bullet point number 3 already on the resolution.
Oh, geez. Okay, my bad.
That's okay.
Why did I
I
think
think
that
it was
wasn't
good.
on
I
there?
think it was good to look at it in the context of the contract discussion that we had earlier. So
Gotcha,
we're good.
gotcha.
We're good.
Okay, so with that said,
Go ahead.
are these, I know we've had this discussion before, but are these in any particular order of priority?
So they,
Go ahead.
so they get entered into what's called the CAPSA system, which we have to provide to our state lobbyist, and they have to get entered in some order, but there's no priority ranking associated with those. So
Okay.
it's not like they're received and this is the most important item. So they're filled in pretty much in the same order in which they'll appear to you tonight, but they're not priority ranked.
Okay,
Is that?
yes, thank you so much. And sorry for my error.
No, it wasn't in there. It was good discussion to have, especially with the update from earlier today. And just a reminder, where we used to have, again, just to repeat this again, where we used to have federal, state, and local, got very complicated and convoluted. So now we have one resolution that's consistent that we can use as our script for when we're talking to representatives working on grant funding. So that's what we're working on today. Is there any further questions or comments or amendments? I just have one comment. I appreciate the city administration, really backing this out and working on this leading into it. In past years, it was like a hurry up and just copy and paste from previous years. So I just appreciate the thoughtful approach and really working with department heads, talking to council, getting our input ahead of time. I know that working with the community, we used to have a lot of community items on this list, and then just reassuring those organizations in the community, we still support their projects, we can give letters, we can do specific resolutions, and just a more targeted approach when it comes to their priorities also in the community. Thank you. So, Madam Clerk, I think we are ready for the vote.
Excuse me, voting on resolution 21-144 for the priorities as amended. Dumas,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Muckler,
Yes.
Casagrande,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is under new business items, update evaluation forms for the city officials that are appointed by and report directly to city councils. And that includes the city manager, city clerk, and city attorney. You'll find that on page 235. And then also, there was a packet that was laid down. Let me get there and I'll speak to it. So, we talked about this as a body. We did set up an ad hoc committee consisting of myself, Councilmember Dumas, and Councilmember Osenga, just to look at the forms again and the process. And, we wanted to stay with the process of interviewing one of those entities January, February, March. And tonight I'd like to talk about the order for this year. And then what we did update was the employee performance appraisal forms and then also the goals. So what you have in the packet, let me back up. So city manager, city attorney, and city clerk each had a different evaluation form. So what they did was they pulled out what was in code in their job descriptions and evaluated to all those items. where we've really had it be more standardized, like within organizations, there's one performance appraisal form, and then that form you reference back to their job description. So it's more standardizing between the three of them, what those appraisal forms look like. Simplified, it was all this math that had to be done, and by the end of it, it was kind of watered down where that number maybe didn't really mean a lot necessarily. So this is a more exceeds, meets, and needs improvement, and we'll still compile those so they'll know, what percentage of, people gave them what. But just more of a snapshot than, kind of this math equation. And additionally, the goals will be really, hopefully more helpful with the specific goals, how that success is going to be measured, making sure that it's achievable with realistic objectives, the relevance to what their job description is, what's outlined in code, and just the timeliness about what time we expect. And again, the laydown has the current process, which we weren't going to change other than, some of the language might need to be clarified because there's not necessarily a tabulation team, there might be an evaluation team. But so tonight, what I really wanted to do was, one, talk about these forms. They will have to come back to us as a resolution to formally adopt them. Or if we want to have a work session to kind of, make some more sausage with these, to ask the committee questions. And then the other thing is to set the evaluation schedule this evening. So for folks that weren't on that ad hoc committee, I don't know if there's questions or comments, or if we'd prefer to have a work session. Councilmember Pasquaranda?
Just from my perspective as somebody that would be utilizing these forms. So if I understand correctly, page 236 would be the evaluation that I would fill out.
Correct.
Page 237 would be the evaluation that we as